There are some specific and in some cases unexpected laws about how you can fundraise for your nonprofit out there. So let's talk about 8 of them. And just making sure it's clear, laws around fundraising are a good thing. They help protect donors and organizations alike from unsavory fundraising practices that could be fraudulent, violate privacy, or cause other types of harm. And failing to abide by these fundraising rules as you set out to raise money can be costly. You could get hit with fines or even lose your nonprofit's tax-exempt status. Outside of these legal penalties, your mission's reputation can take a hit too, making donors wary of giving to your cause in the future. And in some cases, acting out of compliance could result in personal liability too, meaning you as an individual could be penalized. I think I've sold fundraising laws here. So in this episode of our Changemaker Cafe Fundraising 101 series, we're going to talk about these laws related to nonprofit fundraising so you can be in the know and make sure you're in compliance. Don't forget, you can download our series action guide for resources and tips on fundraising at changemakercafe.com. Thank you to Click and Pledge for sponsoring this series. Ready? Let's get curious. Okay, quick disclaimer before we jump in here. I am not a lawyer or an accountant, so you should always consult one for details on your specific situation. That said, let's go. The first thing we should talk about is, what if you're fundraising as an individual? In other words, not as an official representative of a tax-exempt nonprofit. I get comments on this channel all the time about this question. So an example would be creating a GoFundMe page, maybe for a personal need or a friend. There are 2 important rules here that you need to be aware of if you are fundraising as an individual for a personal need or a special project. First, since you're not acting as a tax-exempt nonprofit, these donations won't be tax deductible. It's important for your donors to know that. You've got to be transparent on your fundraising pages so you don't have donors that have that misconception. And saying that donations are tax deductible when they aren't is considered fraudulent. The second thing you need to know is that donations raised for individuals can be taxed as personal income. That means that even if you raise $1,000 for your friend, you or your friend could still be liable to pay taxes on that amount. So check out IRS rules, or again, talk to an accountant if you need assistance. And be sure to keep good records of all money raised for tax purposes if you are fundraising as an individual. Next, let's talk about something a lot of nonprofit startups miss, which is getting your fundraising license. It's often called your solicitation license. So your nonprofit is officially registered as a nonprofit in your state and through the federal government. So you're good to go, right? Not quite. In addition to being registered as a tax-exempt nonprofit, in most states in the United States, 38 states, in fact, as of the time of this recording, you're also required to have a charitable solicitation license. And you need this license for the state that you're operating in. And if you plan to request donations in other states too, whether through mail or email or social media or events, you likely need to be registered in each of the different jurisdictions prior to initiating fundraising activities. Again, it's a little complicated, so talk to a lawyer or accountant. Another thing to be aware of is that in many cases, you'll need to renew your license every single year in order to stay compliant. To register for your license and renew, search for which department in your state handles those licenses. Sometimes it'll be your Secretary of State, or maybe it might be your state's Attorney General. Next, user privacy is a big thing in all industries right now, but did you know that privacy laws impact nonprofits and donors also? Several states have comprehensive data privacy laws, and nonprofits are not always exempt from these, so you want to be sure to know the rules. They impact how your organization collects, uses, and shares data, especially around donors, volunteers, or vulnerable clients. So to make sure you're in compliance, first you want to check your state or region's privacy laws to really understand how they impact your nonprofit's data collection. Each area is going to be a little different. Second, You want to make sure you have written processes explaining what data you collect and how you safely store it. If you're using like a donor database, most of these should have outlines of how they securely store donor data so they can help you be in compliance. And then you also want to make sure you have a privacy policy available to donors and others on your website that explains your data collection methods and their data rights. Finally, you want to make sure that anyone else on your team, that's board members, volunteers, staff, etc., are all familiar with these processes and donors' data rights and are prepared to remove or update data as requested by donors. Now, a solid donation collection platform can really help you make sure you're operating in compliance with donor privacy and other rules. So I think this is a great segue to thank the sponsor of our fundraising series, Click and Pledge. Click and Pledge is a safe, secure, and comprehensive platform for nonprofits ready to raise money and grow their impacts. They've got a lot of features, including highly customizable donation forms, in-person fundraising donation collection, text to give, peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns, and one of my favorite features, which is you can put donation links right in videos that you create so that people can donate right from those videos. They've got all these personalized donor outreach tools and a complete Salesforce integration and a lot of other integrations too. Some platforms are going to charge more based on your organization size, but not Click and Pledge. The pricing is going to stay the same even as your organization grows or your donor list increases. And nonprofits usually really appreciate that there are no contracts. All of the solutions are included at no extra cost. You can learn more about Click and Pledge's fundraising solutions and get your first month free using the QR code here or the links below this video. Get in touch with their team, ask questions, schedule a demo, or maybe you're ready to give it a try right now. Fourth, let's talk about what happens if a sponsor or donor makes a contribution and in exchange, you decide to give them a pair of free event tickets. Well, if the sponsor or donor gives more than $75 and has received goods or services in exchange, it could be considered a quid pro quo contribution. What does that mean? It means two things. First, it means they can't count their entire sponsorship or donation as tax deductible. Instead, they have to subtract the fair market value of whatever goods or services they received in exchange from the total value of their donation. So if a donor gives your nonprofit $100 and receives a concert ticket worth $40 in exchange, then only $60 of their donation is actually tax deductible. Second, your organization has to provide a written disclosure statement to the donor. Some donors just aren't aware that they can't deduct the entire donation if they get something in return, so this statement can help them clarify that. The statement should include a disclaimer that the deductible portion of their donation is equal to the total minus the fair market value of whatever they got in return, a good faith estimate of the market value of what they received, and it's important to know that failure to do this can incur IRS fines for each infraction. Are you thinking of hosting a raffle fundraiser for your cause? You might want to check your state's gambling laws first. Some states require a license to host any type of fundraiser that could be considered gambling, like raffles, lotteries, or poker tournaments, before your nonprofit is allowed to do it. And some states have really complex rules. For example, I know that in North Carolina, you can only host a certain number of raffles per year as a nonprofit. You can't use the funds raised from the raffle to pay people contracted to organize the raffle or rent the space where the raffle is held. And you can't conduct a raffle at the same time as a bingo game. And if you have alcohol at your event, it can't be sold or served in the same room as the raffle. And then, of course, some states might prohibit these types of fundraisers entirely. So rule of thumb is to always check your state's specific laws. What if someone donates a service of their time to your nonprofit instead of cash or a material good? Well, as of the time of filming this, that is not considered tax deductible. This applies to time or services you give pro bono as an individual volunteer or as a business. However, as long as the organization that you're serving is an official tax-exempt nonprofit, you could deduct the value of any direct costs you incur while providing those services. For example, gas or mileage to get to your volunteer destination, uniforms that you had to purchase in order to volunteer, travel expenses if your volunteer work requires you to, say, attend a conference or an event, or other direct expenses. Again, check the IRS website for details. What about if your organization gets contributions from another country? Well, you might need to submit special reports under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, or IRS rules. These rules are designed to help the government monitor potential foreign influence to affairs in the country. These rules especially might apply if the donation could impact U.S. policy and/or the donor is directing your nonprofit to spend the funds in a specific way, meaning it's not an unrestricted donation. For example, a U.S. environmental nonprofit receives a $250,000 grant from a UK-based foundation to fund a campaign opposing U.S. oil drilling legislation. Well, if that foundation is involved in shaping the messaging or goals of that campaign, then these rules might apply. You can learn more about how it works and how to make sure that you're in compliance with international funding rules at the U.S. Department of Justice website. Eighth and finally, let's talk about nonprofit partnerships with businesses, also sometimes called commercial co-ventures. First, it's great news if your nonprofit secures a partnership with a business to raise awareness or funds, but you do have to make sure that your partnership is complying with your region's disclosure and reporting requirements if applicable. Cause, marketing, or partnership campaigns take a lot of forms. For example, maybe you're partnering with a local bakery and $1 of every pastry goes to your cause. Well, before you get started, check your state's rules on commercial co-ventures because depending on those, you might have to create a written contract outlining the exact terms of the partnership. Make sure all advertisements disclose the precise amount being donated. Submit a report to your state about the results of the campaign, and in some areas, the partnering business may have to also register as a co-venturer or secure a bond. Getting things in writing and keeping good records is key, no matter what kind of partnership it is. All right, I'm curious which of these 8 rules or laws was the most surprising to you. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Share your thoughts in the comments. In the next video in our Fundraising 101 series, we're going to talk about AI in fundraising, how it can be used, how it is being used, and the ethical implications of it all, because there are many. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss it, and I'll see you for the next episode of Changemaker Cafe.